welcome back, folks, one and all. Welcome to my channel, Bright Model Engineering, and welcome to the new subscribers, of which there are quite a few. I mentioned in a previous video I had camera problems. This video is going to be slightly different. We're not making anything in the workshop, it's a catch-up. In the absence, because if you look in the timeline, there's 7 months of gap. I wasn't idle, I just didn't have a camera. Oh, there's a clue there. That's the camera I was using. It came out very dark, but I was busy in the workshop making bits. And I went out the other day and I'd managed to sort out the camera problem. Oh look, some people will recognise that. A GoPro, because I bought the wrong one. I bought one of the few GoPros that doesn't have a zoom. That's going to be rectified very soon with a second GoPro. If you start getting things, collect them. So yeah, it's a nice little gadget. It will do what I want, and as you can see from this video, it comes out nice and clear, nice and bright, so people can see what I'm talking about. I know you don't like my voice, you'd rather hear machinery running. Anyway, on to the chassis. This was the chassis more or less as bought, but it had been modified in the previous videos, and I will show you those modifications in place and some additions to it. So the first one is here at the back. That was added on, all nicely shaped down. At the front, again added in and shaped the back. Cutouts, that's a axle box keep, of which there are 4. You'll see them in a minute. There they are, all nicely machined. It just needs the studs putting in place to hold them in. Next time I take the frames apart, I'll be doing that job. That is a hole for a spring hanger, and I started machining them. I wasn't happy with the results, so I will be ordering some castings from a very nice casting company who do very good prices. The information on them will be coming up, but these, there's 8 of them, are riveted there, and then the special bolts holding them in place sit inside, and those go through the springs across the bottom of the axle boxes, or to John Smith's design. To the rear, there's lots of other holes drilled. That's one of the modifications for the axle box keeps. They've all been done, it's just a matter of drilling them for the studs, and that little job is complete. That's one of the cutouts, and another one at the back. There's lots of holes drilled for different fixtures, and just there, saw it very briefly, black on black doesn't show up, but that is the spring hanger, which was machined out of solid for the rear springs, in the trailing ones. So the spring hangers on the rear are ready to go in, cross members, all the usual stuff. That side is done. Now if we're talking about trailing wheels, when I bought it, it did come with machined wheels, and there's a machined wheel trailing on its axle, nicely machined using the DRO to get the length tapered towards the centre, which is thinned to clear, I think it's to clear the brake rods and anything else which is underneath. So that's the trailing wheels already ready to go into their axle boxes, and the driving wheels, of which there are 4, these have got to be modified. When I got them, they didn't have the crank pin holes, so a jig was made up. They were mounted in the vertical mill on the centre point there, and the table was just moved at the appropriate distance to the boring head, so that the hole could be drilled and bored to the correct place. To make sure each one was in the correct place, on the jig there were 2 pins which passed between the spokes, so there was a repetitive alignment, and each one is identical. Very important. Those have got to have counterweights added and some lead poured in. That is the leading axle, which is a parallel thinned into the centre to allow for the motion gear, oil groove in the bearing, and a hole drilled in the end which comes out in a nice little hole in the side. Nice bit of turning, and I was very pleased with the finish. That's silver steel. I'm not sure what the Americans call it. Then we come to the big boy, the crank axle. These are the eccentrics. They are loose on the axle at the moment, but the holes are there with grub screws to lock them in. There's still one job to do to these. Again, an oil hole, oil groove, and there's another oil hole and groove on the small end. Talking of the small end and the big ends, they have to be drilled and pinned. Also, when they were made, you can see 2 dots on those, and on the other side there is 1 dot, so it shows that they were machined as pairs and hence as such identical. They were machined together, clamped into the vise. Martin Evans and John Smith both say pin them. I will probably use taper pins. It's just a matter of finding some long enough. I've already got a taper reamer, so I'm happier using a taper reamer than just plain pins. Taper pins, you can hammer them in a little bit more. There's no looseness it takes out. The front and rear buffer beams, these have had loads of holes drilled and several holes filled. The plates to go for the buffers and the coupling hook have been machined. These have to be drilled and then fixed in place. There's some angle iron to fix on and a rectangular hole to cut in the coupling hook plate. And I can never remember without looking at the plan whether the front one's got the thin or the thick, but it's on the plan and I will get it right at the time, or when the time comes. On the back, because I'm going to use ready-made buffers, I've relieved the back. Oh, I missed that one. That one will be done, but on the other one you will see a relief milled out there, ready to take the nut that holds the buffers in place. Very important to have buffers. I'm not so sure about that comment. We'll find out more later, probably in the next video. But that's the buffer beams out the way. The plan is to get the chassis on its wheels, and then I can start looking at the motions, the brake gear, and all the stuff that goes with it. So it's an air steamable chassis. These are some other parts that go towards that goal. As you can see, oh, there's a step, and I happen to have a nice sheet of 16 gauge mild steel, 1/16 of an inch, 1.6 millimeter to those who are interested in that. These are all rough cut with a jigsaw, a nice battery driven electric jigsaw, and some of them have been shaped and manufactured. This was done using 1/2 inch mild steel plate, milled to the correct internal width, another one clamped, and then they were beaten over on the 3 sides, usually 3 sides. That one is just 2-sided, but the steps are unequal, so there's got to be played with a bit. So yeah, I think there's 20 of these plates altogether. All go different places, different features. Some are brackets, steps, parts of the running board supports, all sorts of things. Most of them have got silver soldered corners. That's one example. And quite a time was spent on these to get them right, flat. And in the very near future I'll be out in the workshop. You'll be joining me and you'll see them milled to finished size, holes drilled, ready to be fixed to the chassis. When the wheels are in place and the axle boxes are there, then they will all start to be riveted and bolted to the frames, and it will really begin to look like something that's not going to be too far away. I've been told the castings, some are on the shelf, some have to be made, and the turnaround could be 2 months. Don't worry, I will be busy and there will be things happening in that meantime. I won't be idle. There's still a lot of work to do to these, but that can be done in the wait time. As you saw with that one, it's much deeper than the drawing, so there's a lot of work to do to that. These ones have got little gussets in, which have been silver soldered. They will be fully cleaned up, descaled, probably wire brushed with a little Dremel, get all scale out, any rust which is grown on them. These ones are the valance sides, front and rear, and they just need, they've been curved, as you can see. That was done with the boring head, and they go there. They've got to be flanged to fit to the running board and the buffer beam, so they add a little bit of stability. There's the other one, and an empty tin, an empty box. Those all live in there together with any other parts. There are a few other bits which I didn't bring in, but by and large the majority, certainly the interesting bits, are all here. But it shows I wasn't idle, I was doing bits, just couldn't be filmed. You don't really want to see me bashing bits of metal unless they're copper. If it's 16 gauge steel, it is certainly not very interesting, it's just plain noisy. These are the 8 spring hanger bolts, all made to the drawing. I think it's 4BA on the end, and I can't remember what the thread was, but I did follow the drawings. It was just repetitive machining, on and on. So anyway, that is this video. Thank you for watching. If you liked, tick the like box and subscribe, etc. You know all the routine. Yeah, nearly every person who has a video up will go through all that. There will be one more video coming up, which is a bit of an oddball. It will introduce you to an old project which isn't complete and why it's not complete, and one project that will run in conjunction with Dart, and then the next project which should be of particularly interest to fans of American locos and our American cousins over there on the other side of the pond, or whatever you want to call it, the big puddle. Easily enough crossed. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next ones, and very soon we'll be back on productions. So anyway, thank you.